Hello, good happy morning, everyone. Nice to see you in this space. I'm going to try to do this live without my dog Jane barking. We're going to see how that goes because there are people moving around outside. I'm on location, traveling around. We're outside of Mexico right now. We're back in the US, doing some exciting things. And so I'm in a new place, which is always fun. I love being in new places, so that's why my background is different than usual. I'm going to talk today a bit about how it is that you apply the spiritual practices that you might have in your own life to the realm of your marriage, of your relationship. As I've been really contemplating what it is that I do, I know I am, for those of you who've been in this space a while, you know that I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a certified sex therapist. And so I have a lot of traditional training. But as I've been doing this work for almost 20 years now, I recognize, like many of us, right, who are expert in our field, what I do is different than traditional counseling. And lately I've been thinking about how what I do is really a kind of spiritual translation. So I really help people translate their spiritual practices into the everyday practicalities of their relationships, whether that's their marriage or parenting, caring for elder parents, their career, whatever it might be. You know, for many, many years, I've been very involved in different spiritual traditions and practices, everything from more structured practices in churches to yoga practices to meditation practices and everything in between. And one of the things that always struck me is, you know, I could sit with a group of people who are so big-hearted and kind, and, you know, we're meditating or we're reading very influential material. And then when the service or the practice is over and we go into sort of the everyday-ness, where maybe they're chatting with me about their partner or they're making a meal to serve in the fellowship community space, or we're doing service work together, that spiritual wisdom, right, that we were engaging in gets dropped. Right? So in other words, we can be in a holy space. You can be in your synagogue, on your yoga mat, and really feel the presence of something that's bigger than you and agree with whatever the teacher or guru is saying to you. And then it's like we step out of that space and back into our lives, and we go back into this old identity, what I call your 1.0 identity, a much more down-regulated space. And the point, for me anyway, of spiritual practice is to take it on the road. Like, who cares how holy you are in your church or your synagogue or on your yoga mat, or even if you're teaching at the yoga class, if as soon as you step out of that space, you drop into this very worldly, enlightened, and I don't want to say enlightened like it's some place to strive for, but rather, as I see it and teach it and practice it, we're here in these human bodies in order to allow that light to move through us, which means taking in those teachings, whatever they might be, right, from your tradition or practice, and then applying them in that moment when you're tired, annoyed, sick, the AC unit just went down, you need a new car, there was an accident, there's a crisis, there's a medical diagnosis, there's a pandemic, whatever happens, right? And it's not about perfection, but it's about exercising those spiritual concepts that so many of you, if you have been following me for a period of time, I tend to attract women who do have some kind of practice, even if it's one that's more in their minds and hearts and a perspective of the world, right? The point is to bring that forward, to knead it into your body, your being, and then to apply it to how it is that you parent, co-parent, walk through separation, walk through divorce, create a new marriage for yourself, whatever it might be. And that's the place that I think is the most interesting. It's the most alive. It's why we're here, in my humble opinion, as humans. It's to take those practices and apply them rigorously when what we want to do is drop into a very tantrumy, egoic place of right and wrong, good and bad, black and white. What I often talk about is like this tug of war, right? This shouldn't be happening. My AC unit shouldn't have gone out, or there shouldn't have been the accident, or I shouldn't have had to move really quickly, or I shouldn't have this diagnosis. And that's all about resistance, right? It's all about pushing away what's happening now. And what I've learned from being a student of spirituality and different faith traditions for a period of time is that the major tenets are often really similar. And they come down to concepts such as acceptance, peace, love, treating your neighbor as yourself, right? And that all sounds well and good, staying connected to your breath on your yoga mat, right? Not comparing yourself to the person next to you on the yoga mat, giving, being generous with your time and with your resources, right? That all sounds well and good in your spiritual tradition or your church or synagogue or your place of worship. But then embodying that with your partner, when you're feeling contracted, annoyed, tired, angry, that's the point of our spiritual practices, is to be applying them and to be willing to be in that space of not even wrestling, but just witnessing. So much of what I do with the women who I mentor, it's about helping them grow awareness to what they're bringing and where it is in that moment where we want to collapse and we want to make someone wrong. And I still do it too. This is my practice as well. And I don't strive for perfection. I strive for continued rigorous practice to bring awareness over and over again when my egoic self would want to make my husband wrong, make the neighbor wrong, make the situation wrong, create some sort of internal conflict, because we live in a world that is very accustomed to drama and conflict. And I would actually say that we're quite addicted to it, to the drama. And most spiritual traditions, religious traditions, don't teach that we should be perpetuating drama. And yet we do. And it's easy to say, well, they do. But the good, honest, rigorous work is to look at, where do I do it in myself, and where do I do it with the people around me, right? One of my favorite quotes by Johann Wolfgang Goethe is this: the way you see people is the way you treat them. The way you treat them is what they become. The way you see people is the way you treat them. And the way you treat them is what they become. And to me, that line really is an invitation for all of us to consider how it is that we treat, and before we even consider how we treat our partners, how do I treat myself? So many of us, especially as women, have been taught to treat ourselves poorly. We self-terrorize with things like anxiety, worry, fear, internal blame. We bully ourselves, right? We stay in this cycle of internally of this place of drama and internal conflict. So how I see me, if I see myself as not enough, that's what I will become, is not enough. Some of you who might be middle-aged like me might look back. I just saw a picture of myself from like 12 years ago. And I was like, damn, I looked great. But back then, I thought I was fat. I remember when I saw that picture of myself 12 years ago, and I thought I was fat. And now I look at it, I'm like, I look amazing, right? And the way I saw myself was what I became, which was obsessive about my body at that time in my life. And similarly, right, this is true for our partners. If I'm seeing my partner constantly is not enough, what are they going to become for me? That's part of this spiritual practice that we're in. And I wrote a post yesterday, so you can go back and see it. If you're in my Facebook group, you would see it today, about how it is that, you know, we can bring a version of ourselves to our marriage, an up-leveled version to ourselves in our marriage, like how we do in business. Those of us who are entrepreneurs know you show up game on, whether you have clients or not, whether you have customers or not, whether you landed that project or not. You show up acting as if. And it's the same in our marriage. We can show up acting as if, right? And if you're in a place where you want to see your partner as enough, but they have whatever they have going on for whatever reason. And I always have women say to me, but my partner is an addict, mentally ill, whatever it might be, fill in the blank, and they're not going to change, then great. Then see them as valuable enough to liberate them and you from a structure that you know is not going to change. If you know it's not going to change, if you see it as it's not going to change, it probably won't. Great, totally fine. Then have that internal maturity to act on that knowing, if that is your knowing, and free yourselves from that so that you can create what you want, right? It's so easy in our relationships, and I certainly know this well. It's why I teach what I teach. I had to learn it myself. It's so easy to say, but if they changed, it would all be better. And, you know, the good invitation, and it is truly an invitation of being in this life, in a marriage, in these bodies, right, is to start taking such accountability for ourselves, knowing that I get to see and treat people, myself included, in the version, in the way that holds them at their highest potential. And sometimes holding my partner at the highest potential means honoring that you're complete with the relationship. Or for many of the women who I work with, they want to make sure that they're doing all of their internal work first. They want to make sure that they're doing all of that good internal growth work first so that they know they can be complete with the relationship. And so I really offer to you to consider your marriage, your life situation, your relationship situation as a spiritual opportunity for your growth. It's been so wonderful over the years to have the great gift of working with so many people who are very spiritually minded, who are even ministers in their own right, rabbis, holy people in their own right, teachers. And to see how it is that when they start applying these kinds of concepts into the everyday, seemingly very mundane place of their relationships, things start changing. And so that's my invitation to you, is to start considering your relationship in whatever stage it is, whether you're single, widowed, divorced, separating, married, whatever it is. Right? Start really looking at that as an opportunity for you to up-level yourself, to evolve yourself. Thank you so much for being here. If you have any comments or questions, please post them below if you're watching this on Facebook, and I'm happy to answer any of those questions. I will check back. And if you watch this on replay, please hashtag replay for me, so I will go back and see who is watching, and again, happy to answer any of your questions. If I am speaking to you through this video and you're interested to find out more about my 8-week relationship mastery program that I do with women, that is a big game changer. DM me, reach out to me. I'm easy to find, and we will see if it's a good fit. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your comment here. My #1 fan is in the house. Thanks so much. I will look forward to seeing you next week.